Hey there, welcome to the UkeStuff channel and welcome to this full UkeGuide review of this instrument. This is the Lotkey. They list it as the Ukalalee on Amazon. I don't know how people are ever going to find it with that description. I know I wouldn't be looking for ukulele, but it must be a trigger word that people look for. But nonetheless, that's what it is. It's the Ukalalee as made by Lotkey. So originally I had bought this and I was going to be reimbursed for it. I don't think I can ask the company to reimburse me for it because I won't be giving this instrument the greatest score. Won't be the worst score I've ever given, but it's not going to be a great score either. So as we look at this instrument, we're going to be looking at all the different subjective issues that I look at, then we'll look at the specifications, and then we'll summarize with a summary and a UkeGuide rating. Now, if you want to contribute to this work, you can do so in a few ways. First of all, you can hit the like button. Second, you can subscribe to this channel. And third and finally, you could always buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ukestuff. All right, so with that said, let's begin with the subjective issues. This one comes in at just under $28, so shipped with taxes, it's under $30, and that includes the kit. So that's where a lot of the value comes in. It's a pretty inexpensive ukulele. We'll talk more about the whole package as a whole, but in terms of value, it's an okay value because it is a playable, functioning ukulele. It will require some work, but you also get a very light dust cover gig bag, but then sort of a decent kit. I mean, there's a cleaning cloth in there, but a tuner, some picks that you won't use, and then also a nice little strap. So I like that kit that comes with it, and that adds some value. So I mean, if you're going to buy that strap at a store, now granted, it doesn't cost them that much to add the strap to the package there, but if you're going to buy that in a store, it's going to add $3 to $5 to $10 to the price, and the tuner in a store by itself is going to be, a $7, $8, $9 tuner, if not more. So right there, you're getting a lot of it back with just two accessories that you normally have to buy yourself. And then it does have plastic. These are not metal, plastic strap-ons, but I can't see any reason why those wouldn't continue to work. They are screwed in, so if you had to replace them, you could. But realistically, at this price point, this is a replaceable ukulele overall. So the value is actually pretty good for a functioning ukulele in the kit that you're getting. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily the greatest ukulele overall, but it's still a decent value. Now, the next thing is the issue of build quality, and this is where this instrument probably suffers the most. The first thing and most important thing are sharp fret ends, and I'm going to have to work on this one. So if I, for example, give this to one of my students at my school that would like an ukulele, I'm going to have to work on those sharp fret ends. Now, they're easy enough to work on, but this is an ukulele targeted towards beginning players. Beginning players aren't going to want to deal with sanding fret ends, so that's a concern. There are no side position markers, which again is a concern for me for a beginning player. If you look at the inside, it's really a rough build on the inside. Lots of glue, and embarrassingly, there's no sticker on the center. The sticker actually has detached and is attached on the side of the ukulele, which we'll see in just a second. The geared tuners are really hard to tune, really hard to turn. Yes, maybe some 3-in-1 oil or household oil worked in there would help that, but again, what do you expect at a $28 price point? Well, functioning tuners, right? They do function, but they're a hard turn. The strings are just not good. They're colored strings, but they don't match the Aquila Kids strings. DR also sold some kids or colored strings with those same colors. So the colors on those Aquilas are green, red, yellow, and blue, and these are sort of white, green, blue, and yellow. And the negative there is that if you have a teacher that's teaching with Aquila Kids strings, like I do, a student that buys this are going to get all messed up because the colors are different. So if you're going to use colored strings and you're not going to go with the rainbow spectrum in order, Roy G. Biv or something like that, and in some sequence there, you might as well use the pre-existing color sequence. Also, just not great quality strings. The Aquila strings are so much better. So, quite honestly, if one of the first things you would probably want to do with this instrument is to take these strings off and put on other strings, whatever strings of choice. And if you wanted the rainbowish sort of strings, get the Aquila Kid strings. So yeah, it's a pretty rough build. The fretboard is really dry. That's listed as Blackwood. The bridge is also pretty dry. So let's take a look at the inside of the ukulele as well, and you can see what's happening in there. All right, let's take a look inside the ukulele here. All right, as we look at the back, you can see a lot of glue. The screws pop through really at the bottom of the bridge support plate. Not sure what the black dots are that are in that glue. You can see that it does have a tail block and that does have kerfing. It's just straight kerfing. But it's definitely lots of glue, and there's the label that's supposed to be in the center of the ukulele. So instead of being underneath the sound hole, it's on the side of the ukulele. So let's go take a look at the upper bout of the ukulele while we're doing this. Okay, going inside there, you can see where the label was supposed to be. There is the neck block up there. You can see more of the heavy glue. You can see the straight kerfing that's used. I'm not sure what those black dots are in the glue. Again, low quality, low cost build, and you can just see compared to other ukuleles that we've taken a look at on the inside. And that's our internal look at the Lotkey Soprano Ukalalee. Okay, we're back from our journey inside the ukulele. Yeah, it's pretty rough in there. Now, is that a critical issue? The answer is no. I don't think it's going to fall apart on you. But when you take a look at the inside, it really gives you a vision into the craft and care that was put into the construction of the instrument. And it's pretty clear that this was made to be mass produced at a low price, and that just that attention to detail isn't in there. The one thing to be aware of probably in the inside is that the screws holding on the bridge are really at the end of the bridge plate. I don't think that's going to cause an issue. Now, that all said about where those screws are, at least they put the bridge where it needed to be, because you do have harmonics happening where they should happen on the strings. So they did put the bridge in the right location, even though the bridge plate may not be quite where you'd want it. You want the bridge plate more center for the support of that bridge. Now let's talk about appearance. From a distance, it doesn't look too bad, really. And closer, the semi-transparent stain on the headstock looks pretty good. And on the neck, it looks pretty good. But once you get to the body, you lose any grain pattern at all that might have been there in that basswood. You get a hint of some kind of grain pattern on the front, and I'm not sure what that is necessarily as a finish. But also, there's where you see some of the overspray on the edge of the sound hole. So I don't know how all that works out with the actual red parts being here and here and here. How you get overspray in the sound hole, I don't know how that happens. Anyway, you do have a transfer rosette. You do have the transfer name on the top. That seems to be under the finish. It's not a sticker. And you do have a few features like strap buttons, colored strings, even though I would replace them. And you do have 15 frets, not just a 12 fret ukulele. So ultimately, the appearance is okay, especially from a distance. Up close, it's that build quality that's going to really disappoint you and sort of let you down from what you thought was nicer from a distance. Now, in terms of availability, if you'd like one of these, you can order one on Amazon right now. You just have to look up ukulele. And again, I don't know how people are going to find that, but that's how it's listed on Amazon. In terms of playability, the action actually is really decent. So it's, a nice, comfortable setup at the first fret and at the 12th fret. So really no complaints there. The nut is narrow towards 34 millimeters, although string spacing is very close to normal 35 millimeter nut. So once again, people with large hands probably won't like this, but my guess is you're probably not going to be buying that beginner ukulele anyway. The biggest detractor with playability, again, are the sharp fret ends. It just makes it a little uncomfortable to play. Again, that can be addressed, but on an ukulele, it's going generally to a beginner, not what you want to see. Now, as for sound quality, if you heard the demos at the beginning of this video, it's not a great sound, but it's also not a terrible sound. It's got a little bit of that plunk, it's got some volume, it's got some bark if you need to have some bark, and it does have some decent sustain. Still ringing a little bit, and all the sustain is in the lower frequencies. So it's not a bright instrument. That could be helped with some different strings. It has a boxy laminate sound, which is what you'd expect, but it's also not unpleasing. So really, of all the factors, other than the general setup, which is pretty good with string action, the sound quality is probably the most pleasing part of this instrument. One of the things I do in these videos is I let you see what I'm hearing. So I play the instrument into Tonal Energy Tuner, the app, on my iPad, and let you see what's happening with the Harmonic Energy series. So here we go. Here's the C chord. So if you see what I'm seeing, again, you get the whole spectrum that sort of lights up when you strum, but really the sustain and the overall nature is on that lower side of the instrument. Some decent volume. Overall, not an awful sound. Definitely a laminate sound, definitely a boxy sound. But again, what do you expect for $28? All right, now that we've talked about the subjective issues, let's talk about the specifications. This is a soprano ukulele. The scale length is 13.625 inches from nut to saddle. There are 15 frets with 12 to the body. There are no side position markers, which is too bad, and it is your traditional double bout ukulele. The soundboard and back and sides are made of laminate basswood. The fretboard is listed as black wood. It's very dry and it is not radiused in any way, which is what you'd expect. The bridge also is made of that same material, black wood, whatever that means, also very dry, and it is a tie bar bridge. The nut and saddle are plastic, and the saddle is not compensated. The finish is sort of a semi-transparent satin finish of some kind, and the overall length of the instrument is 20.875 inches, so just under 21 inches, and it weighs 14.2 ounces, which is pretty light, and the balance is pretty decent in your hands. Now, the action at the first fret, which is the space underneath the string to the top of the fret, is 0.5 millimeters, which is just what I always look for. And the action at the 12th fret, right where the body meets the neck, is 2.5 millimeters. So the action here is very good. The nut width is only 34.17 millimeters, so really close to 34, although the string spacing sort of mimics a 35 millimeter nut, which probably means that there's less space on the ends of the fretboard from the first and fourth strings to the edge of the fretboard. It's 8.46 millimeters between each string at the first fret, which is 28.45 millimeters G to A. So that's tighter than a 35 millimeter nut, but not by much. So realistically, if you're used to playing a 35 millimeter nut ukulele, this one isn't going to be too much of a stretch down to adjust to. The neck is a traditional C-shaped neck, but it actually overall the profile is a little thinner. So that is to be applauded. It's not just a round neck, but the depth is pretty chunky. So what I do is I measure from the top of the strings at the third fret to the bottom of the neck. That's 21.37 millimeters from the top to the bottom, which is pretty thick. But again, that shape makes it feel a little bit not as thick. So that's kind of nice to see, not a giant chunky baseball bat on such an inexpensive ukulele as well. All right, now that we've talked about subjective issues and the specifications, let's summarize the instrument. This is meant for a beginner, and it's really probably meant and targeted towards children more than even adults. Realistically, it's probably the cheapest you can get into a full kit for an ukulele on Amazon. It is a playable ukulele. It is a functional ukulele. It will need some work to be its best, especially with sharp fret ends and different strings. I think you're going to want both of those things. But it isn't an unpleasing sound, and it is at least playable in terms of being set up correctly with the distance from of the nut to the saddle along with the frets. There are other ukuleles I've reviewed where those measurements are wrong, and then the instrument forever can never play in tune because it just doesn't have the right ratios. You can get the strings in tune open, but then nothing else. That isn't the case with this instrument. Now, the most egregious thing for me are the sharp fret ends. Normally, I don't get too bothered by sharp fret ends. I'll mention them, but I'll deal with them. But again, this is an instrument that's geared towards beginner, somebody that isn't going to know how to deal with that and is probably going to be afraid to deal with that, just like they'd be afraid to put in strap-ons, which really, if there's an instrument that you're going to sort of experiment on, isn't a $28 ukulele really the instrument for that? Tuners, not great. They work, but man, they're hard to turn. The overall build quality is really low, but it's not going to fall apart on you. And, really, it's not a terrible sounding ukulele for that price. Are there better ukuleles? Absolutely. And that's really, I think, where I'm at, which is at $28, you can buy a functioning here ukulele with a kit of things. And if you separate it, you're going to pay more than that just separating those pieces. However, for $25 more, you can get yourself into a pretty decent starter ukulele that's a much better ukulele from any number of vendors, along with a kit and even a stepped up gig bag. So the question is, what would I do? That's where I have to be negative here and say this isn't the one that I would buy myself for my beginner. I would look at that next step up for just $25 more. If money is the only object for you, then yeah, I guess so. But I would even look at, for example, the IRCs that you can find sometimes in that $21 to $25 range that may not come with everything, may not come with strap-ons, but the overall instrument is going to be a better instrument. So I give ukuleles ratings between 0 and 5 ukuleles. While this is a functional ukulele and it requires some work, it's immediately limited by the lack of side position markers. I've recently decided that any ukulele that does not have side position markers can't get higher than a 3.5. I'm just finding as a player I need them, and I know that other players as they progress will need those side position markers as well. Yeah, you can get stick-ons, you can mark with a Sharpie, but it's just not the same as having it come from the factory that way. Sort of a needed thing. So your score is already a maximum of 3.5. And then I think with the build quality, that's a concern. Not so great tuners, not so great strings, a gig bag that isn't the greatest. I mean, it functions, but it's not going to protect your ukulele in any way. I think really a 2 out of 5 is where I'm at with this. A 2.5 would be like halfway, and it's less than that because, again, of the rough build. Now, does that mean you shouldn't buy one? No, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy one. If you want to buy one, go ahead. If this is what you want to get for your child to just bang around and not have to worry about it, dropping or whatever, go for it. It probably will withstand some abuse the way that it's built. But again, for just $25 more, if that's any possible in your budget, in getting into that $55 range, $60 range, you can get some pretty decent ukuleles, with a better bag and a similar kit and the things that you need than you can for this one for 28. So yeah, it's a functioning ukulele, but I'm also not gonna pretend like it's the best ukulele. And really, it's the sound quality is more surprising than you'd think it would be. It's better than you'd think, and the action is better than you'd think. But the rest of it is probably what you pretty much expect for a $28 ukulele. All right, so that wraps up this review. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll be back soon with some more Uke stuff for you.